Hey everyone, welcome to this YouTube video. I'm making these small little videos for you guys out there who I've heard a lot of feedback from are finding it difficult because of being on disability or having different things that are happening in your life. You're finding it difficult to afford to go to specialists or to afford to go to yoga therapy. So I've decided to drop a video every Friday. And so this is one of the first ones. This video is one of, I think, the most helpful and the most important parts to understand when it comes to pain in the body. So for those of you who have never heard of fascia before, I encourage you to go online, to do a little research, and to really start to understand what your fascia system is. Now, I explain this all in my Yoga Therapy to Heal Freedom Formula program for chronic pain or chronic conditions. And in that program, we get to kind of really dive into the education behind what fascia is so that you can understand why you're doing the practice you're doing and why it works, okay? So for today's purpose, just to keep this video short, I'll just give you kind of a little bit of insight. If you're not familiar with fascia, your fascia system is kind of a network. I like to think of it as almost like a spider web of connective tissue in the body, and it holds your bones, your muscles, your organs, everything together. And so if you didn't have this fascial network, what do you think would happen? Your bones and everything would fall to the ground. So this fascial network allows for this perfect amount of tension and integrity in the body so that the body can slide and glide freely. It's made up of collagen, elastin, and water. It's very wet, and it allows everything to kind of move freely in your body. So one of the ways that we can hydrate our fascia, because when we start to become more sedentary in our lifestyle, if maybe your job requires you to stay seated at a desk all day, your fascia starts to dry and dehydrate. And so the practice is to unravel all of that, to rehydrate the fascia so that your body can get back to sliding and gliding freely. It's one of the most beneficial practices I've seen with my clients, that I've seen with myself, and a simple way to hydrate your fascia, well, number one, to drink enough water. So make sure you're getting a good quality of water and the right amount of water. And number two is with movement, but especially with this foot rolling that we're going to go through today. So Thomas Myers, he's a kind of expert in fascia. He wrote the book called Anatomy Trains. You can find information on YouTube that he's put out there, as well as if you're really wanting to dive into it, you could read the book or really, go into some of the research that he has out there. And so he has, in the Anatomy Trains book, explained how we have myofascial lines in the body. And so most of those lines, so if you have an issue maybe of some bunching or dehydrating of your fascia, perhaps say right here, and it just starts to kind of tangle, starts to bunch up, it stops the movement here because it's so dry, starts to adhere to its surroundings, so it could be adhering to other bones, muscles, tissues. And then now you've got a problem with this hunching over on the other side of the body. So now you might have pain over here due to a bunching of fascia here. And so that's why often where our pain is, it's not actually where the problem is. And so we want to have this kind of perfect biotensegrity, this combination between tension and integrity in the body, allowing it to move with integrity and with that allowance of the perfect tension on the skin. So if this is feeling overwhelming, not to worry. I just encourage you to try the practice, okay? So most of those anatomy trains or lines in the body, those myofascial lines, a lot of them either originate or end in the foot. And so when we start to hydrate the foot, the fascia of the foot, it actually hydrates up into the rest of that fascial line in the body. So even though you're not working specifically maybe in your shoulder, you're hydrating a certain line of fascia that's connected to your shoulder in your foot. And so now your shoulder can suddenly move more freely because of the work you're doing in your foot. Okay, so that's enough of the lesson for today. We're going to get into the practice. And the practice is to roll out the feet, and there's a few different ways you can do this. So you can see I have my trusty toe spacers on. And these you can get on Amazon for fairly cheap. They're really nice because they help to space out the foot again. We're kind of crunching our feet into shoes or into different spaces in life, and our feet are our foundation. So we really want to be able to utilize the entirety of the foot. So if you can bring toe spacers into your life, it might be a good investment, just something to practice or play with. And then from there, you have the option to roll the feet from laying down. Now, if you're somebody that is finding it hard to even be seated right now due to pain in the body, then you can take this practice into a supine position, so on your back. The other option is, of course, in a chair. So if you're in a chair, you want to make sure that your feet can connect to the earth, checking in with toe pads. That's each toe. Taking in some nice deep breaths. Checking in with the heel of the foot. So noticing where the foot might be kind of floating compared to where it's actually grounding down or connecting to the earth. You want to make sure that your knees can be in line with the hips. So if they're way out this way or if they're turning in, just allow them to kind of become in line with the hips or so in that area. And then they're stacked over your ankles. Pelvis is nice and rooted or heavy on your chair. If your chair is too high and your feet are up high, then adjust. So either put a block or something underneath the feet so that you can feel that full connection of the foot. Or if your chair is too low and you feel like your knees are up high, then either get a different chair or add some more to your seat. I like to just use blocks or blankets and pile them up if needed. And now you have the option of using different tools to roll. So you can use, I love using the wooden dowel. It's my favorite. You can get these at your local hardware store. I had my fiance just cut me some, and they're very handy for different therapeutic yoga practices. If you have a nice spiky ball with some give, you want it to have some give. Some of them out there are really hard plastic and they're not very good. This one's from Half Moon, I believe, Yoga Props, which you can find an affiliate link as well as 15% savings on my website, treatyourselfwellness.ca, if you want to invest in some yoga props. Or you can use a smaller squash ball. So this is a squash ball that I got on Amazon, like a package of 3. They're quite cheap, but they're very useful when it comes to yoga therapy. So depending on what's happening in the feet, you're going to choose your adventure or whatever you have on hand. I'm going to use the dowel. And so you're going to decide which foot you want to roll first. We usually start with the stronger side because the body teaches. So whichever side you're going to start with, it will show the other side how to kind of follow suit. So I'm just kind of widening my feet here a little bit, walking the other one out, but still keeping it nice and planted, nice and rooted, not coming up on my side of my foot or my toes, just connected to the earth. Taking nice deep breath. And then growing a little bit taller with each breath. So we're rooted through the feet, the pelvis is heavy in the chair. And then we're growing from that rooting down. There's kind of an opposite rebounding of lengthening up. And from there, you can pick up the foot that you're going to roll, place it on your prop, whether it's the spiky ball, the squash ball, or the dowel. And you just begin gently rolling. So the most important part here to start with is your breath. Okay, so making sure that you can keep a nice, slow, easeful breath, noticing the quality of your breath. And so if you find areas of the foot that feel really sore, tender to put on the dowel, then just avoid that if you can. And instead move to other areas of the foot that it feels maybe good or somewhat good. Sometimes at first none of this feels that good, so it's kind of a retraining the body to relax into it. So that's where the breath is so important. As we breathe through the nose, we send a message to our nervous system that we're safe, that there isn't a threat, which allows our body to relax more. And especially for those struggling with chronic pain, you kind of are in a your system is overstressed, right? You're always in the stress response. So bringing in that nose breath can start to retrain the body and mind that you're safe. And if you don't feel safe, if it doesn't feel good right now, then maybe just start with 1 minute at a time. Or come back to it when you feel safer. So you want to roll the inner arch of the foot. So I'm just putting the weight of my foot onto the dowel. You can choose, you can kind of pull it up and off a little bit, so you decide how much weight to put into the foot. Rolling the side of the foot. So this is similar if anyone out there is familiar with reflexology. All of these points, reflexology points on the foot, relate to a line in the body. And then it relates to a organ, a system. Our body is so connected, right? It's not just a bunch of pieces put together. It's all connected. So if you're starting out and this feels okay to do for about 5 minutes per foot, then go ahead and do that. And I encourage you to do that daily. If you want to do it from seated first, then start to increase the practice into a standing practice. And so the other side I will show you from standing. I want to also show you now a technique that we use called the pin and twist technique. And so this is, you find maybe a little spot that feels like it's a bunching of fascia. It's a bunching of that dried, dehydrated spider web that's all tangled up. And so you might find that spot and then pin, so put a little more pressure on the foot, and then gently twist while you're breathing through the nose. Very gently. So in this practice, we want to find ease. There's no need to push. There's no need to, strain yourself. Good. So if that side feels complete for now, we're going to move to the other side. We'll come back to center, grounding the feet. We'll take a nice cleansing breath in through the nose, out of your mouth. So you want to open your mouth as if you're trying to fog up a mirror. One more. kind of letting it all go. Okay, so we're now moving into the standing portion, but if you're still working on the chair, just stay seated and move to the other foot. I'm going to show you the standing version. So you want your dowel in front of you. You're going to see how you have kind of arrived on your mat here in the standing. And that's the same with when you're seated. You want to notice how your feet are lining up with your body. So if your feet are splayed open, this is a very good indication of what's happening in the hips. And if they're splayed open, the femoral, the head of the femur, the leg bone, is in the hip socket, and then it's rotating externally out, right? And so that can put a lot of pressure in the hips. It opens and strains the front of the body in the pelvis area. And then if you think of the back body, when our legs start to open that way, we're actually putting more pressure and compression into the back body. So see what it feels like to kind of line your feet up so that the outside edge of your foot is in line with the outside edge of your mat. You might feel a little bit of pulling or something that feels a little bit awkward or weird in your body. Just breathe. Asking yourself, okay, am I safe here? Does this feel comfortable? Can I find some pleasure maybe in this with my breath? And if the answer is yes, then we're going to ground into our standing foot, so the other side. For me, it's my right foot. Grounding, rooting down, but then there's that rebound of lifting up. So you might even think of that lifting coming from the inner arch of the foot, through the pelvic floor, through the spinal column, all the way out of the crown of the head. So a rooting down, and then a rebounding, a lifting all the way up to bring this other foot onto the dowel. Another option here, if you're first working with the standing version, is to bring a chair or support beside you as you roll. So with this, you're going to get a little bit more of an opportunity for a stronger pressure, perhaps. Full deep breaths. So you want to think of a radiant breath, three-dimensional, rolling through, avoiding areas that don't feel good. And then maybe spending more time in the crunchy zones and maybe even pinning. Sometimes I like to even just take some pressure off the standing leg and kind of put a little bit more weight onto that foot that's on the dowel as I breathe. It's kind of opening the fascia there. And when we do this, when we kind of bring the dowel into the foot, there's a rebounding in the fascia. It's like it recoils and then hydrates. So just breathing through what feels safe, comfortable, and pleasurable for you. Inner arch. Nice deep nose breath. Still thinking of that grounding down and then this rebounding up. So sometimes when we put the weight into our standing leg, we tend to kind of bump the weight out into our outer hip. And so to combat that, think of dropping your weight into your inner toe mound of that standing foot and your inner heel. And that helps to draw the energy back into the inner line of the body, the midline. If you want to play with the pin and twist here, finding your spot that you want to pin, and then thinking again of that biotensegrity, that perfect tension and integrity through the whole body. So as I'm twisting my foot, my whole body moves. So it's not just my foot moving, it's all in in relationship. Good. When that feels complete on that side, you can come out. I like to take what I call palm tree, which is just letting the arms swing back and forth, cleansing breath in through the nose, out of your mouth. You can even imagine you're on a beach somewhere. Maybe some of you are out there. And then you kind of let it all go. You went to the beach, you left it on the beach, and now you're back on your mat. So the next step to the foot rolling sequence is to open the top of the foot. And so we have a line, an anatomy train or a myofascial line through the top of the foot and the front of the body. And so when we take the toe mounds, and by toe mounds I mean kind of the knuckles at this part of your foot, and we take them onto the dowel, and then drop your weight into your heels. Allow your toes to kind of wrap over your dowel. See if you can drop your weight down, letting it go into your heels, into your toe mounds, wrapping the toes. You might feel a little tugging or pulling in the hips or somewhere else in the body. And breathing here. Now, so with this practice, we really focus on 70% effort or less. If you're dealing with an injury, 30% effort or less, okay? So it's really important to ease off, especially when the body is in stress or dealing with injury. So if you feel like you're at your 70% effort here, then stay here. If you feel like you're maybe at 30%, but you're not injured, so you want to try to 50 or try to 70, then you can start to send the hips back. I take my thumbs into the hip creases. These are all techniques I learned from my mentor and teacher, Michelle Schroeder. She's from Agna Yoga in Victoria, BC, a wonderful yoga therapy studio. You can send the hips back, and then you're starting to bring a nice flat back down. So as you come forward, notice what happens in the shoulders. Do they kind of want to round down? See if you can draw your shoulder blades down your back. You don't have to go forward too far. Notice what's happening in the knees. Do they start to knock in, or do they start to go out? Sometimes it's nice to put a block or a prop between the thighs. And then that way it kind of keeps everything in line. You have something to kind of squeeze and support into. And once you arrive where you feel like you're at your 70% effort, we're going to stay there and breathe. You can hug the lower rib cage into the body. Shoulder blades down the back, and then let the arms go. So they can swing here in circles. And they can swing back and forth. Breathe. If this all feels like too much, then just come back to standing on the dowel or take a break. Listen to your body. When that feels complete, you can start to walk up. If you want more, you can walk all the way down into a forward fold. Breathing. Just remember how important it is in this practice to honor your 70% effort. So if we're going past 70%, as I'm coming up, I'm breathing, rooting into my feet, walking my hands back up my thighs, and then stepping off the dowel. So in a lot of life, in a lot of our practices that we do in life, maybe when we're younger it might work, it is important to kind of push harder maybe sometimes. In this practice, and especially for people struggling with chronic pain and disease, it is totally pertinent that you do not push harder. As you push harder, the body will go back into stress, which then exacerbates the system to stay in those chronic pain patterns. Okay, so part of the practice is to figure out what is your perfect edge for your body? What is your kind challenge for your body? And some days it might be different than others. Some days my body maybe can only go to 10% because I'm really dealing with a lot, or feeling overrun emotionally. And so really honoring and meeting your body where you're at is a huge part of this practice. So please, please, please keep that in mind. Try easing off. Every time we ease off, we learn something. And often what we learn is that there's something more beautiful in that sense of ease. Okay? The last part of this practice is to do heels on the dowel. So you can walk the heels onto the dowel, and then you're going to drop your weight into your toe mounds, drop your weight into your toe pads. Maybe cleansing breath. And so this is a really great practice to help with bone density. So in the calcaneus bone, the bone of your heel, when we kind of press hard on it like we're doing with the dowel, we stimulate osteoblast production. And these osteoblasts go and help build bone density in the bones. So if you're somebody that is quite a maybe lighter frame in the body, they can often, this body type can often end up more likely to develop something to do with a bone density issue due to not having that extra weight to kind of press into the heel when they're walking around. So this practice can actually help stimulate those osteoblasts. From here, you can root into the heels or the toes, kind of transferring your weight. And then we're going to think of a sliding and gliding sensation. So I explained the fascia to be made of water, elastin, and collagen. And so healthy fascia is very wet looking, and it kind of slides. You think of a open heart surgery, when we open a chest or something in surgeries, you see all the organs and everything there encased in these fascial bags with moisture allowing everything to kind of slide as they're moving or beating or whatever's happening in the body to slide and glide freely. So thinking of that same sliding and gliding, you're going to keep the shoulders relaxed. Inhale. Exhale to slide and glide the arm up. You might start to feel a pulling or a tugging, maybe a popping or a clicking. And so if you feel a pop or a click, it's not to worry. We want to stay on this side of that. So for me, I start to feel a really good tug right about here, because this is my shoulder where I have less range of motion. So instead of pushing through it, I ease off. And I slide and glide with breath. Checking in with my range of motion here. And then you can even pulse a little bit on this side of the tugging, like the really intense tugging or clicking or popping. And that little pulsing is also hydrating the fascia, so that maybe next time, maybe, doesn't matter, you might have more range of motion. But we're meeting our body where it's at with a kind, compassionate acceptance. And then if we want to explore an opening in the side body, you can bring the arm up to where it's comfortable. Maybe the hand goes to the top of the upper back, and then reaching out of the elbow. you might start to lean over to the opposite side. So we're opening through this side body. You can also keep the arm up if that feels better. And you're opening through the rib cage, the diaphragm, while keeping the rib cage pinned into the body. So snugging that lower rib cage still into your torso. Breathe. And coming back up. You may stay on your dowel. If it's getting sore on the feet, then you can step off. You can also be doing this practice without the dowel or from seated. And we're going to do the other side. So we're just looking for that sliding and gliding motion. Going to a place where you start to feel a click or pop. Noticing if when the arm comes up, does the shoulder want to come up too? Invite that shoulder to drop down away from your ear. Use your breath. So see if you can synchronize breath to movement. One side might be very different than the other, and that's okay, that's normal. And then maybe you're coming into your lateral release. So wherever you want to keep your arm so it's comfortable, we're allowing both sides of the body to become long, hugging or snugging that lower rib cage into the torso. Breathing as you're rooting into that same side foot. 70% or less effort if you're dealing with an injury, 30% effort to start, maybe less. Nice deep three-dimensional breath. Good, and then coming back. Going back to the beach, we can take a palm tree, cleansing breath, or a pursed lip breath in through the nose and then out of the mouth with pursed lips. Can also be a nice kind of relaxing, releasing breath. Good. So you might feel a little dizzy when you do this one. If that's the case, you don't have to do it. Another way to do a release is an inhale, arms up overhead. Exhale as you bend through the knees and just think of throwing everything you no longer want behind you. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, throw it away. Sometimes that's even too much, and if that's the case, just allow your body to release the way it wants to. Maybe it's in stillness. Maybe it's coming to a seat or onto your back. So listening to those little inner messages from your own body to tell you what's happening, what you need. Getting in touch with our intuition is one of the key pieces in overcoming chronic pain. And it's not easy at first, but like anything, it comes with practice. So stay the course. And if you have any questions, comments, please put them in the comments below this video. Like and subscribe and share with anyone that you think would benefit from some pain relief or hydrating of the fascia, range of motion. Thank you for joining today, and we will see you next Friday.